Hey guys, welcome back to Pages, Panels, and Pictures, your one-stop spot for all things comics, movies, and more. Moon Knight episode 4 is here, and I have only been able to describe this to people as zany as hell. So join me and my co-host Tildian as we break this episode down. It's not just crazy, it's not just over the top. It starts with the usual Moon Knight guff, and then it devolves into chaos so quickly, including but not limited to tombs, ancient priests, the afterlife, an illusory asylum, and even a giant jewelry-clad hippo. From about halfway through this episode, we're left questioning, possibly more than ever so far in the show, what is real. At the climax, Mark's shot in the chest twice by Harrow, and he seemingly dies. He sinks into a deep, watery abyss, and then it cuts to a weird aspect ratioed old time VHS movie called Tomb Busters with an explorer named Stephen Grant. And
Yeah.
then it's revealed to us that Mark is in some sort of insane asylum. It seems like he's been here for a while. A lot of the people, all the people that we see in the asylum are they're people from the previous three episodes and this fourth one, and it really makes us question like if Mark has been imagining this the whole time, or there's a bunch of different things we could talk about in that regard, but we'll get to that at the end of the episode. Mark refuses to accept that this reality, or Mark refuses to accept that this is his reality, and he runs off only to find two sarcophagi. One included Stephen himself, somehow in corporeal form alongside Mark, and then another sarcophagus that they didn't open. Presumably, it's going to be the third altar, Jake Lockley. Then the episode ends with them coming to a door. As it swings open, they are greeted by Oscar Isaac Apocalypse. All right, no, but they are greeted by the hippo goddess of Egyptian mythology, Taweret. She is the goddess of fertility, childbirth, protection, and rebirth. First half of the episode felt Tomb Raidery, and then the second half just fucking blew any crazy mystery or any weird reality bending scene in WandaVision out of the water. It was over the top. What were your thoughts on this episode?
The hippo reminded me of Carmitage, like that fucking that animal looking dude that we saw in the Doctor Strange trailer. That's at like that other world Carmitage.
Rintra the Minotaur.
Yeah, like it gave me those type of vibes. Like it seems like we're gonna get into a lot more of stuff like that in the MCU here soon. Um, I enjoyed it, man. I'm kind of locked in. I was very confused by the ending, but I'm also very intrigued. So I can't wait for next week. I'm going to be honest with you. Harrow's character is a bit more interesting than he's ever been at this point, and I'm like definitely trying to see where this fantasy or slash delusion leads to. If this is a part of Amit's power that he has in that staff, like is this one of his parlor tricks? Is he fucking Mysterio? It definitely seems like something that is going to unfold right at the top of episode 5. So to be honest with you, my anticipation for Wednesday is pretty high, man.
Yeah, man. It's gonna be insane. I can't wait for that. I guess I'll get into a brief rundown of the plot, just to give a quick recap, and then we'll get into the real questions of the episode and what we're thinking. The episode opens with the avatar of Osiris putting the Oshapti statue of Khonshu into a like wall structure with a bunch of other ones. Presumably, later in the episode being revealed, Tararet, I'd assume her statue would also be in this wall of the imprisoned. We don't know why they're doing it. We don't know if the Ennead could potentially pose a villainous threat in the series, or if they are just doing their godly duties. But cut back to Stephen and Layla. We're dealing with the aftermath of Khonshu disappearing and Stephen losing his powers of the Moon Knight. Layla goes full Jurassic Park. She uses a flare to distract and then later blow up the truck of a bunch of Harrow's men that were pulling up shooting on them. They
Yeah.
escape. They travel through the caverns. Actually, these are the same caverns in Jordan that were used to film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So that
Really?
was a cool, obviously inadvertent reference to those movies. But it's around the time, or it's around this time, we start catching wind that Steven's trying to move in on Mark's woman. He is trying to make a move on Layla, and Mark is adamantly protesting, even gaining enough control to punch himself in the face at one point. But after a bit of back and forth, Steven does in fact do this. He macks on Layla before they finally dive into the depths of the tomb. In Steven's case, literally dives. Uh, in the tomb, Steven encounters many ancient artifacts, one of which is a sphinx. He references to the riddles that the Sphinx of both Greek and Egyptian mythology always end up asking. It's the what starts off on 4 legs, ends up on 2, and then ends on 3. It is man. A baby's on all 4s. A man is on 2 legs. An old man is on 3 because of the cane. But they end up coming to their own riddle involving the Eye of Horus. They end up solving it, and they realize the tomb is one big maze based around the depiction of the Eye of Horus. And since this is thought to represent the 6 senses, and the avatar of Amit would be the tongue, they choose the path of which is the tongue, the swirl on the bottom, and well, it leads them in the right direction. They end up in some form of mummification chamber. Mark up top, Layla down below, and it looks like they're in a recently used embalming tomb. And we find out why. Because these weird ancient priests, they were the priests earlier in the episode that they're talking about on the stone tablets. They have been living here somehow for years and years since the tomb was sealed, presumably, and one of Harrow's men gets lobbed on the table, and they proceed to show a bloody, gushy uh, mummification process where he's actively removing the organs, and then a chase ensues once he realizes they're there. He chases Layla, she rips his arm off and stabs him in the eye with a flare in order to kill him. One of the darkest kills in the MCU so far, possibly the darkest kill in the MCU. Uh, Super gory. These priests are weird as hell to me. They click when they walk, which one is like echolocation used by bats, or the clickers from Last of Us, the type of zombie. They don't have eyes, they can't see, so they use echolocation by clicking. The reason they actually click is because of the mummification process, their tongues would have been removed. Stephen ends up recognizing the writings on the foot of the tomb once found that they are Macedonian. There's only one Egyptian king in the history of the world who is tied to Macedonia, Alexander the Great. That is, in fact, Amit's previous avatar. They find the Ushabti of Amit in his mouth, and it's based on another riddle from the Eye of Horus earlier, but they're the first people to ever discover the tomb of Alexander the Great. In real world history, even, this tomb is still to this day undiscovered. So that's like the big real world tie in that they always give us in an MCU project. While Steven's going through this tomb, Layla has an encounter with Harrow where he reveals, in fact, that Mark's involvement with her father's death is more than he's revealed so far in the series. Layla gets back into the tomb after this encounter with Harrow, talks to Steven, demands that Mark come out and talk to her and explain himself, and as that's happening, Harrow's men come in shooting. Mark goes full Conan the Barbarian, grabs the axe out of the tomb, and starts going absolutely nuts on his men, killing them all. Harrow walks in at the end, shoots him in the chest, and delivers the line, "I can't save those who won't save themselves." Then it cuts to Mark's body sinking into the abyss, and from there, we get the events that I explained earlier in the episode. Him waking up in the asylum, not knowing what's happening, and then he goes into a meeting with Arthur Harrow, where Arthur at the end goes, "We can't help those who won't help themselves." And it triggers something in Mark, obviously the memory from getting shot, and he goes absolutely nuts, breaks out, escapes, beats up some orderlies and shit, and he's running down a long hallway of rooms. And it's kind of reminiscent in the second episode in the storage locker when he runs away from the duffel bag and Mark and all that. In the first room he comes upon, though, he sees a sarcophagus, which obviously is not going to be in an insane asylum. So he opens it, and who else is in there but Steven? Blah, blah, blah. We told this. They go through or past the other room. They run to the end of the hallway. They see a knocking on the door. It opens, and there is the hippo goddess Tauret. If you like pop culture graphic tees and decal stickers based on all your favorite comics, movies, and anime, then Studio 5 Star is the place for you. They have great product, better deals, and new limited time merchandise popping up weekly. One of those actually happens to be our new Moon Knight inspired design, Ancient Scriptures, which is available for order now. Some of our previous designs, including Strange World and Vengeance, are going off at the end of the month. That's only a week away, guys, so get your orders in now and use promo code PANELS at checkout for 30% off of your order. You guys can support the channel here at Pages, Panels, and Pictures by going and checking them out on Etsy and follow them on Instagram at Studio 5 Star Official. What the hell is happening? I'm just going to get right into our first question, which is, what is happening in the end of episode 4? It is thought to be some sort of asylum, and Mark's been dreaming the events of the series. It's obvious that's not the case. Given his main character status and a long history of Moon Knight stories like this, it just won't happen. But chances are Mark is actually dead and in some form of purgatory or the afterlife. I believe it's the Overvoid in this show, where they potentially are meeting another god who is sealed away in these Ushabti used to encase Khonshu. And Mark and Steven will have to team with this goddess, one potentially even having to host her as an avatar. That would pose an idea of how they would revive themselves, similar to how he was revived by Khonshu. And they're going to have to figure out a way to escape this astral plane. I think they're going to need the help of Jake Lockley. Yet again, like we say every week, this show is a wild open book. Though it's based off of some very specific comics in Moon Knight's history, it goes left field with those ideas, and it is its own original story. I wouldn't say it's an adaptation of any specific run at this point in the show. That being said, the events of this asylum are ripped from Jeff Lemire's 2016 run. And Mark is in fact not imagining everything. He's actually being manipulated by a man named Dr. Emmett, who is the host of Amit. And that's obviously where Harrow's inspiration comes from, almost more than Arthur Harrow, the character in the comics. But
Yeah.
so that's where we're going with it. But in conclusion, there is 3 options for what is happening. This is all a fantasy, and Mark is in fact a patient in this asylum, imagining the events of the show up until now, and creating the ideas of Steven and Towerette based on pure delusion and apparently Tombbuster VHSs. 2, everything we saw in the hospital is not real, but Mark has slipped into his own subconscious after getting shot, and he is on the path to death. Or the third option, and kind of the most outlandish, but has some backing based on previous episodes. Mark Spector has already been on the path to death, or is already dying, is already dead, and he is trying to find his way through the proverbial field of reeds, and there's weight to this, given the little girl in the first episode asking him randomly and for no reason if it sucks for him that he was rejected from the field of reeds. No little girl would know that, even if, obviously he died and was revived by Khonshu, but not a random person would know that. So this is some type of delusion that's happening even in the first episode. This could be telling us all that it's some sort of purgatory judgment setup where he's going to have to go through all of this, and then potentially actually will get to his revival in the desert from Khonshu the first time, and this would all have been in his head. Any of these are possible, honestly, at this point. The show is so fucking wild that, I don't know what to expect, but we have some questions that still need answered in the next 2 weeks. The first one being, what happened to Layla's father? We have a few ideas. It could be Harrow. It could be Bushman, the man who did it in the comics. It could be the super violent Jake Lockley, or even his partner, who seemingly should be Frenchie DeChamp from the comics, might have been the one who did it, since he said his partner's the one who pulled the triggers. But what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely believe that I call it the body. And I don't know which personality, but I think the body had something to do with it. I think Harrow knows more than he's saying right now, and I think that it's all going to unfold in episode 5. I honestly think, again, that's something by the end of episode 5 we will have completely solved.
For sure. Our last question that we really haven't gotten answered so far, surprisingly, given the mystery that these Disney Plus shows love to leave us tied up in. who is the third alter? We still have to meet him. It's gonna be Jake Lockley by name, but maybe that's about it because he seemingly seems super violent to the point where Mark has him locked up. And I think Mark does know something about this when they pass the room with Jake's sarcophagus.
Mm.
Steven looks scared and like he didn't expect it, but Mark knew what was happening and what was going on there. So Mark, I feel like, had to previously lock away and reject Jake because of his violent nature. And like he's covering up what happened with Layla's father, he'd be covering this up and hiding it from Steven. I think it would create some good tension in the last two episodes because he's been pushed away from Layla because of these lies, and then he'd be pushed away from not just someone else, but a direct alter of himself. Like, it's crazy to be so down bad that you are pushing yourself away like that. And I, for one, am ready to see this third personality because he is a skull cracking, ass beating machine. We have seen nothing but ass whooping and badassery from him so far. My final notes, this show had beautiful CGI so far. This episode specifically looked good. I couldn't even tell the difference between CGI set pieces and actual ones, and that's awesome. The film style, the cinematography as a whole was just really reminiscent of those good treasure hunter adventure films that we know and love from our childhoods. So I,
Yeah.
for one, this episode was probably the best one for me. It was a 10 out of 10. It actively had me like, well, what? When the fucking asylum scene started, I was like, bro, I knew this was gonna happen at some point in this show, and I did
Yeah.
not expect it to be this like believable and confusing. It was awesome.
And as far as my closing thoughts, this show has been a pleasant surprise from top to bottom. This episode is no different. Gotta be honest, the asylum shit definitely threw me for a loop. And it has me clued up and readied in for the next episode. And to be honest, here we are recording this on a Saturday night. And I'm finding myself regretting not being able to turn the sky forward to Wednesday.
I could not agree more. Before we close out the episode, you guys can follow my co-host on all forms of social media at TildaN, and you can check me out on Instagram at RoachTheBoyWonder, where you can get updates on this channel, you can get some pretty cool artwork, and you can hit me up for all your art commission needs. Last but not least, if you guys like this content, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to get notified when we drop another Moon Knight review.
And with that being said, this has been Pages, Pictures, and Panels. I am your host, Tilda Yen, with my co host, Roach Boy Red.
And you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend.